I'm thrilled that we can kick it off today with a very special guest. It is Mark Thompson, the former president and CEO of the New York Times Company, and also a member of our supervisory board here at Axel Springer. Thank you so much, Mark, for taking the time. I think there is no one else who could share some wisdom in the way you can about what digital subscription and digital growth mean for publishers and what might be ahead of us, and what kind of things we already tackled and challenges we actually met and served for. So thank you so much for being here today.
Claudius, I'm pleased to be here.
Wonderful. And to just kick it off immediately, I mean, I mentioned it, you were like very much into the weeds at the New York Times. And obviously, the New York Times is fascinating to, I think, all of us in digital media here these days. We just saw the 10 million numbers on the subscriber side with the support of The Athletic, obviously. But my question is, looking back now, I think the New York Times did something very smart. They focused a lot on volume in the last few years. And even though there were questions around price and ARPU, the focus on driving volume first seems to be paying off now in a quite literal way. What is your take on that?
Well, I mean, with a paid content business, I'm chairing the American company Ancestry at the moment, which is a paid content business, digital subscription business. And so I'm very focused with management there on this same question. The holy grail, the kind of the center of the economics of a subscription business is not actually ARPU, and it's not price. It's fundamentals like lifetime value, the value of a customer over time, which is about acquiring them, their propensity to become customers, and their appetite for price over the lifetime of your relationship with them. And I guess one thing that we looked at the Times and had a big debate about was entry price. Now, my view was that it's easier to get someone to accept a higher price once they've got used to the product, and that you can think of an initial price as part of a habituation tool, in a way that the subscription, paying something, using the product rather more often because you've got some skin in the game, you're paying for it, can habituate people to the point where they're prepared to pay more. And so you get the customers in. The fact they're paying means hopefully they're going to use the product more. It's a good product. They're going to fall in love with the product. And in due course, maybe you can increase the price. And that you may ultimately make more money with that tactic than by insisting on a high price from day one. Now, that's a hypothesis you can test. And at the New York Times, the hypothesis was tested in some other markets, in Australia, in the UK, and other markets, and then applied to the very big domestic market, the United States, only when the evidence of its success was clear. And that meant looking at retention over many months, rather than just looking at, as it were, the point of subscription. Ultimately, the proof, though, is what happens after a year. Particularly in the case of the Times, the subscription was an introductory offer for a year, followed by a price rise. Obviously, finding out what happens when customers get to that first birthday and whether or not they're prepared to accept a price rise is key to the success of the model. The good news for the New York Times was actually our ability to increase prices, to get people to pay twice as much or even 4 times as much, to go up to the full, as it were, sticker price for the product, turned out to be very good. And therefore the model ended up helping the New York Times scale its digital subscription model far faster than we thought was possible a few years earlier.
Absolutely. I think you framed it very nicely, the 1-year birthday, basically, which leads me to the next question. And it's somewhat related to that, right? Obviously, we hope that all our subscribers have a party and stay on. But if they decide to not stay on, I think in digital media, there's still like I I don't know whether it's a fight, but there are different views on how easy should it be to cancel/pause a subscription. I, for example, just had to cancel or pause my subscription with Disney earlier this week because I felt my kids are not watching any Disney Plus anymore, and I felt like the process was very nice because you had like some options to explain why, and they gave you an offer to stay. But what's your take? How easy/how hard should it be to pause/cancel a subscription?
So I think the truth is that most news publishers, I include the New York Times Company in this, have had very traditional approaches to pausing and cancellation, which I think in many cases go back to physical subscriptions in a sense that you want to make it as easy as possible for people to subscribe and as hard as possible to unsubscribe. And I just think that people have got used to, a very, very different experience with Netflix and Disney and other digital subscriptions. And I think, it'll be a sign of maturity when the news business makes it as easy as it is with entertainment streaming services to pause and unsubscribe. And if you believe in your product, you should believe that people will want to come back. And moreover, that more people will subscribe in the first place if they're confident that they can change their mind at any point. And I'll tell you, when I was at the New York Times, Reed Hastings, the chief executive of Netflix, used to persistently raise with me this issue and saying, what's wrong with your product? I mean, do you think that if you let people cancel easily, that they'll all cancel? I mean, it shows a complete lack of confidence in your own product. And I think although, in my time, we took steps towards making it easier, we didn't get as far as I think we probably should have done. I think that's a very fair criticism of the news industry specifically.
Well, you took away a question here from me because you mentioned the Netflix story to me once before, and I would have phrased it like someone from Netflix I heard reached out to you before about this, but I think you're right, and also Reed Hastings is obviously right. I think it should be a motivation to all of us to improve our products each day, every day, to make them as attractive and engaging so that no one even thinks about moving away or moving on. But the point of engagement or engaging is, I think, also true for, by the way, streamers or entertainment companies. Yeah. I think looking back at the last few years, people were talking about the Trump bump, and engagement was something which was perceived to be there, or it was assumed that there would be always something to attract everyone, basically. Now, with Trump being somewhat not that active anymore, and some other things like somewhat fading out, what is your take on how media/journalism companies should deal with the topic of engagement and keeping people engaged, their readers engaged?
Well, again, it's another really big topic, as you know, Claudius. I mean, the first thing is I think you have to accept the fact that in the news business, the news cycle is a fact of life. There'll be periods where, because something of immense moment is happening, it could be an election, it could be a controversial period in politics, it could be, has been recently, COVID, I mean, a pandemic. There'll be periods which are very intense and where the natural kind of demand for news is high, and other quieter periods when it's less, it's less busy. At the New York Times, my claim was not that Donald Trump and his election didn't, in quotes, help the Times' subscription model. Of course it did. My point was we were ready to take advantage of that by the time Trump was elected in 2016 because of the work we'd done before. So the first thing is the news cycle clearly matters. You have to be ready to exploit it and to be ready for the new customers when they arrive. But that's a factor. But, I would say that at the New York Times and elsewhere, having a broad range of content helps. At the New York Times, as you know, indeed, the acquisition of Wordle increases this. Puzzles, brain teasers, crosswords have been an important habituation tool. Recipes and food and other lifestyle subjects, which are not subject to a news cycle, but which produce bright, colourful, attractive, upbeat and not depressing content. Those can also be useful. And the ergonomics and the ease of use and the freshness and attractiveness of the the actual product experience, the actual experience of using the product. The fact that it feels relevant to you, the fact that it's good at things like breaking news. These are all things which also increase the chances that someone is going to use the product a lot, make it part of their lives, begin to think of it as being indispensable, and so on, which is what you need if you want to get a really strong subscriber. No,
absolutely. By the way, are you playing Wordle?
I'm not my wife is absolutely focused on word puzzles. That's not particularly for me. It's Sudoku and logical puzzles and chess puzzles are more my cup of tea, as it happens.
There are more than 5 options on chess, I guess, or 5 turns on chess. But thank you so much. I think this was, at least to me, really interesting. I think Daniel reminded us that we should try all to stick on the schedule. One very last question from my end, and I don't know whether it's like picking the favorite child. I assume you have several, if not lots of digital subscriptions. Is there any subscription where you feel the value for money stands out and or the experience stands out?
I think amongst news subscriptions, I do find the New York Times, as a user, I mean, I was a Times digital subscriber before I got a phone call asking me whether I'd like to leave the BBC and become the chief executive of the Times. So I'm first and last a subscriber. I do like that. I quite like The Economist, particularly now that The Economist has begun a kind of daily feed of stories. So Economist stories, in-depth stories, for example, currently on Ukraine, for example, not just once a week, but still when you want it, with essentially like a weekly magazine, also available in the same app experience. So I like those two, I guess. I guess most of all. But like many people, I found the streamers, and in particular Netflix, has significantly changed my TV habits. So I'm basically a strong user. I've probably got about 8 or 9 news subscriptions and probably the same number of entertainment subscriptions. I'm a fully paid up member, stroke addict of digital subscriptions.
Wonderful. I think we should all take it as a motivation that we need more Mark Thompsons in the world with 8, 9 digital news subscriptions. This was great. Thank you so much. I really hope that we can see you soon again, also in person, maybe at the next Paid Content Summit here in Berlin next year.